Hello and welcome to This Endorian Life, a Star Wars podcast from the Radio Meanwhile Network. My name is Steve Rudd.
I'm Nick Gunning, and we're following the Ewoks from Return of the Jedi to the Ewok TV movies, and finally now to the 80s cartoon. So glad to be here, Steve.
Oh, yes. Today is the day we are starting the Ewoks cartoon, discussing Season 1, Episode 1, The Cries of the Trees. So this episode originally aired on television September 1985. September 7th, 1985. I always get corrected.
That's right.
That. I do that.
Oh, you say 7 instead of 7th.
I know. It's a habit. I just read it verbatim.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Let's take a look at the cast and crew for this episode here. And now, what we're going to do here, I'm going to take you through this first season cast. There's a pretty substantial cast change from season 1 to season 2. So I'm going to give you the season 1 cast, and then each week we're going to focus on one particular cast member and just give you a little more info about what else they've done career-wise. So let's dive in. First of all, this is more of a fun fact, but this episode was compiled along with 4 others to make the feature-length story The Haunted Village, and it was released on VHS and DVD. So I'd seen it before in that context, and my son had as well. Those do not have the theme song on it because they're cut to be like a movie, so you don't get like mid-credits and things, and there's no opening theme song. It's more of an instrumental.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
okay.
So watching this for this episode was really the first time that I've heard that opening credits song.
Yeah.
And it's something else.
Great.
It's something else.
Taj Mahal is the musician's name. Taj Mahal and Shira Mahal.
Wow.
So like an Afro-Caribbean
masterpiece.
Hopefully his actual music is better.
Yeah. Hopefully, yeah. The music is by Patricia Cullen and Peter Shaw, just the instrumentals and like incidentals in between scenes and things. It was directed by Raymond De Felice, written by Paul Dini. Paul Dini, who would go on to have a huge name in animation with Batman the Animated Series and essentially the whole DC animated universe. So lots of good things to come from Paul Dini. But here he is in the early days writing the first of the Ewok cartoons. Here's our cast, all new cast. We don't have carryover from the past movies and things. A lot of character carryover, but we don't have the same voice cast. And I'm frankly grateful for that. I couldn't have listened to a whole series of that, like, oh, Cindo, let's go find a Wilfred Brimley and hang out at his house. No, thank you. I don't.
Know. At least
enough is enough.
So terrible.
With that
is such a good point.
Enough is enough.
Oh, Cindo, no.
Anyway. Our cast today includes Jim Henshaw as Wicket, Cries Summer as Nisa, Jackie Burroughs as Morag, George Bauza as Chief Chirpa, Doug Chamberlain as Logray, Paul Chato as Paplu, Allison Cord as Milani, Don Franks as the Dulak Shaman, Pam Hyatt as Aunt Bozzy, Eric Peterson as Tebow, Greg Swanson as Ouija, Richard Donat as Weege, and Nani Griffin as Shadu. Our featured cast member for today is Jim Henshaw. He voices Wicket in the first season, so 13 episodes. 26 episodes total in the series. We've got Jim Henshaw for the first 13. He was best known for his work in Care Bears. Were you a Care Bears kid, Steve?
I was not.
Oh, really?
One of the new shows that's out, the Care Bears Care-a-Lot, something like that.
Okay.
One. My kids watch that, and I actually kind of like it.
Oh, my gosh. So you're like a brony, but for Care Bears. What do they call that?
Care Bro. I don't know.
Care Bros. Yes. Oh, my gosh. If that's not a thing, that's solid gold. You need to trademark
right now.
that.
Hashtag
you
Care
need
Bros.
To trademark
Start
that.
it.
Well, I was big into Care Bears in the 80s. You know, I remember I had this Care Bear pajamas that I loved. I, of course, had Care Bears. Always loved the Care Bear cousins that weren't bears.
There was like the Lionheart.
Yeah. You know it. But anyway, Jim Henshaw did voice one of the Care Bear cousins in the first 2 movies. He voiced Brightheart Raccoon. So he was the cousin that would go and steal their garbage at night.
The Trash Panda Care Bear.
After that... I'm laughing too hard at my own joke. Brightheart, knock it off. We have to save Care-a-Lot.
Not again. Sunshine, get the broom.
So he voiced Brightheart Raccoon for the first 2 movies, and then would go on to voice Tenderheart Bear He did
Okay.
that for all 40 episodes of the classic series, as well as 2 of the specials. So that's Jim Henshaw, who's Wicket today. Lots of Care Bear work. Are you ready to get into the Cries of the Trees, Steve?
I am. I
Take.
am. Especially after we just roll right from the creepy intro music
Uh huh.
right into the movie.
Yeah.
All right. Wicked and a group of his friends search the forest floor for aura blossoms for the upcoming Festival of Hoods. After accidentally falling down a hill, Wicket discovers a crop of aura blossoms. But a closer look, the group discovers that what they thought were aura blossoms are actually wispies, one of which is Isrina, the queen of the fire folk. The distraction allows Aunt Bozzy to sneak up on them and catch them not doing their duty. They leave, and Isarina is left behind and suddenly attacked by monsters. Isarina is captured by Morag, the minion's master, and is taken away to be a tool in her devious plot. Meanwhile, back at the Ewok city, Logray and Chief Chirpa develop a fire extinguishing foam. Wicket and the rest of the group struggle to corral Bega, Wicket's pet Bordock, and causes a mess before Tebow can stop it. They give Bega a bath and accidentally spill the bathwater on Aunt Bozzy. This is where we find out Wicket's full name is Wicket W. Warwick, which stands for Wicket Wistry Warwick. Pretty cool. Back at Morag's stronghold, we find out her devious revenge plan is to make the Wispies catch fire in order to set the forest ablaze to get back at Logray, an old friend of hers. Duloc also bumbles in requesting bug repellent for his people and suffers watching the whole plan come to life as the Wispies light the dry forest ablaze. Back at the village, Wicket, Tebow, and Paplu play a drop the sack game that comes to an end when Aunt Bozzy once again gets covered in mud and the group is busted by Chief Chirpa. As punishment, the boys are tasked to clean up the forest floor. A fire wispy ignites Wicket's broom and the forest floor is set ablaze. Chief Chirpa and the other adults show the boys how to put out the fire. The boys are blamed for starting the fire since they lied about playing the mud game. The elders don't believe their new story either. That night, all 3 friends experience a shared vision where the forest trees are screaming out in pain. They all wake up and realize there is something wrong with the forest and discover it is on fire. They try to warn the village but are quickly attacked by a fire wispy. Tebow thinks fast and splashes water onto the wispy, putting it out. The wispy is none other than Queen Isarina, who tells them she was put under a spell by Morag. They agree they must warn the rest of the village. Back at the village, the Festival of Hoods is underway, acknowledging the coming of age of 3 young Ewoks. Wicket bursts into the festival ceremony and informs the village of the forest fire. It takes some convincing, but Chief Chirpa commands everyone to prepare the defensive. The Ewoks try to combat the fire with water, but the river is dried up by Morag's minions. Utilizing a catapult, the Ewoks begin to make headway, launching foam sacks until Morag engulfs the catapult in flames. Wicket acts quickly and throws one of the foam sacks at the catapult and also extinguishes 2 cursed wispies, breaking their curse. With the catapult now aflame, the group decides to attack the flames from above, dropping the extinguishing foam bags using gliders.
Yes.
The idea is successful enough to clear a path for the rest of the village to reach the soul trees. They mustn't be harmed. On her way, Aunt Bozzy is almost roasted, but Wicket drops foam on her. Her curses turn to praise as she realizes Wicket saved her from being burned. Morag, from atop her lookout point, is furious. Her plan is failing. The Wispies get their revenge by dropping a foam sack on her. Rain begins to fall, and Logray thanks the spirit tree. Wicket and Nisa dance, for they saved the trees. Aunt Bozzy thanks Wicket for saving her and gives him a big hug and kiss, causing him to stumble dizzily and managing to say, "Chihuahua," before collapsing in a puddle. The end.
Choice.
Yeah.
Choice. Listen, right away I had a better time than the last 2 movies. How about you?
I know. 100%. You know, there wasn't much to it, but there was a story and a plot line to follow, and there was deceit and evil
I
plots.
understood everybody's motivation, you know?
Yeah.
There was peril.
Yep.
Some pretty exciting stuff. I was actually a little surprised to see that there were actual connections to the Ewok movies.
I know, right? Isrina, right?
Isrina, and we see the spiders. We see the spiders in the beginning too.
Oh
Yeah, but I
yeah.
mean, Isrina is the most obvious because that's a character that's original
Yeah,
to Caravan of Courage. And it
absolutely.
wasn't just the Wispies in general. It was like actually Isrina, who was a major kind of a savior in the first Caravan of Courage movie. So not ignoring those, because I think,
Hmm.
for all intents and purposes, those Ewok movies did pretty well for, Lucas and
Yeah.
ABC and all that. So I don't think that now it's kind of like those are rough. But I think at the time they were just like, yeah, cheap and successful. Let's do it.
Yeah, and it
So,
was, it's cool too that they just continued those characters, that they didn't, wasn't like, oh, let's just try everything new. It was, they used what worked, right? I
yeah.
mean, all the kids like the droids and stuff from Star Wars, so they're
Hmm.
like, well, all the kids must have liked the Wispies and stuff. So there's they added those into the show too, and the kids
Well,
love it.
yeah, I mean, I think that's smart. The thing that surprised me, I guess, was that Teak was not a part of this.
Oh
From Battle for
yeah.
Endor. I mean, that seems like an
Hmm.
obvious to me. You know,
Yeah,
I mean, that just
not
seems
in
like a
there.
no. I think that would be a good character to include because he stayed
Hmm.
behind, as you and Crystal and I lamented at the end of Battle for Endor. Nobody was together,
Yep.
nobody was friends. The fact that
Oh,
they
that's a
pulled
really
his
good
Rena,
point.
I don't know. Maybe this was all kind of written and set in stone prior to the Battle
Maybe.
for Endor landing because this came out in '85 as well. So maybe that's why we got Caravan of Courage characters and not Battle of Endor characters. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. There is a character that looks like the Dulak shaman.
Yeah.
His character, like I guess his look kind of reminded me of Teak,
Oh,
with like
okay.
a weird like half puppy,
Yeah,
half
I could kind of see
like
that with the ears and stuff. Yeah.
something. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. He just reminded me, not even close to being that same kind of character though. So they
It
went a
feels
different
a
direction.
little, I mean, let's talk about this opening theme song for one because it is,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little bizarre. I don't know how
Hmm.
atypical it is from other '80s cartoons at the time. I'm just trying to
Yeah.
think about like what those other things would have been. I mean, the opening sequence of the credits did kind of feel like a throwback to shows like the Wuzzles or Shirt Tales or something like that from the early
Yeah.
'80s that I have like vague memories of. So I don't think it would have stood out from other cartoon themes at the time. Do
Hmm.
you?
Yeah, no, they were all kind of bizarre like that. Like,
They were. They had their own
either
thing going.
really weird or they incorporated like some sort of guitar, like a
Yeah.
electric
Uh
guitar.
huh.
Like remember Denver, the Last
Oh
Dinosaur,
yeah.
and like Captain Planet, and all
Yeah.
those kind of had that like, like the Power
Uh
Rangers.
huh.
All of those. Well, I
Yeah.
guess that's much later,
Yeah,
really.
you're
Power
pushing into
Rangers.
the '90s with that, but
Yeah.
no, it's a good
Oof.
point because that is kind of what the music was like. I feel like this is kind of a, I mean, I enjoyed it, but I'm kind of surprised that this was the one that they aired first because it's
Right.
not a particularly like fun episode. I
Yeah.
think the opening credits are going for a real like we're all family and we're all Ewoks, yada yada yada,
Yeah.
and then the episode is very much like we're gonna burn your aunt alive or we're gonna burn this forest down, you know.
We go
So
way back.
you
He's gonna
know,
die.
yeah,
Like yeah. So
yeah.
it's yeah, no, I agree with that. That and we also don't get introduced to a lot of the characters. Like we
It's
talk
true.
about, we introduce these characters at the beginning, but a lot of their names aren't even said in the show.
It's true.
So
Well, yeah, and I mean, a conversation you and I had off mic, we were trying to decipher, like, wait, now are these the parents? Are these the siblings? Are these the
yeah,
friends? Like, what exactly are the relationships? You didn't have a traditional pilot, really. You didn't have a
hmm
pilot that was kind of like, here's the
right,
premise, these are the characters, these are the relationships, here's what we're going for. It kind of drops you in. So,
yeah. You have your protagonists and then
yeah,
antagonists, and then you do have that. I mean, they did develop that right at the very beginning. You have
yeah,
your Ewoks, and then there's the antagonist where you're like, okay, she captured Isarina, and
yeah,
since we've seen Caravan of Courage, we think she's bad now. Other people will obviously think the same thing, but since we know that background,
yeah,
we already we're like, oh yeah, she's definitely bad because she captured Isarina, who's a hero in Caravan of
mm-hmm,
Courage. But yeah, they have the Morag is the antagonist, the Ewoks are the protagonist, and then you have that renegade who's the Dulak
mm-hmm,
guy that
mm-hmm.
like I have a feeling as we go, I can't remember, but I have a feeling as we go he's gonna do like nice things maybe, or like he's gonna try to do mean things and fail,
Mm-hmm.
like a
Yeah.
character, he
Well, you
fails
kind
to
of you
do
kind of
something
had
bad.
like the big bad, and you had sort of the the kooky sidekick who's a villain, but is not
Yeah,
like as bad as the really bad villain. Like that's a hallmark of
yeah.
that time. What did you think of the overall design? Like the Ewok village and the individual characters and this, the settings, everything.
I thought they did really good. I thought a couple of actually, there was a couple shots of, or I should say shots, but a couple angles of like the village that I thought were really fun because they kind
Mm-hmm.
of showed they gave it a real 3D feel
Yeah.
on the screen that like, oh wow, like there's multiple levels, bridges going across. I thought they did a really good job of that. I thought that was fun.
I agree with you about some of the structures there. I did feel like the color palette was a little drab for a
Oh
cartoon,
yeah,
and especially like an 80s cartoon. It's very brown, you know.
very brown
And
and
they
very
they dress it up a
yellow.
little bit with some of the the headdresses or whatever that the Ewoks are
Hmm.
wearing, but I guess I would have probably put in some more greens and some more, maybe flowers, or just like make the sky contrast the blue a little bit more.
Right.
There's a lot of scenes where, like, looking at it as I was watching it with my son, and it wasn't very visually appealing. And maybe that's just the times, but I
No, I
just
think
found
that's
it to be
true.
very
Yeah.
tan
It was
overall.
very tan, and I think the forest texture got lost a lot, where it
Yeah.
was just kind of like a green on a green on a green on a green,
Yeah, well, you
where there
said
wasn't like drawn in textures and
right,
stuff like
and you're
that.
right about the yellows too, because when there was an area that was lit or something, that like kind of yellow wash faded everything into the
Yep.
background.
Hmm.
It was almost the whole thing was kind of sepia toned.
And it
So
also makes the characters strange too. Like Morag had like a yellow face,
mm-hmm.
and Vega, their pet, was purple. I mean,
Yeah,
like, this seems
yeah.
bizarre.
I think I would have liked a little bit more of, like, here are the Ewoks you're going to follow, a little bit more like introduction that
Hmm.
way. But you certainly would know who the good guys are and who the bad guys are.
Oh yeah,
They didn't feel un-Ewok to me, even though they're all just like talking normally. I mean,
yeah.
with when the peril came and they were very like inventive and clever and coming up with things. We had another glider scene, so
Another glider
we
scene.
are
Yep.
we are
Another
four for
catapult scene.
four with gliders so far. So that's pretty exciting. So I felt like there was a lot of things where you were like, oh yeah, Ewoks do that, that were
Yep.
here in the show. Did you watch it with your kids?
I did. I watched it a bunch of times, and one of the last times I did was with my kids, and they're, sometimes I look at their faces to see how they're
Uh huh.
reacting, and they kind of had this like shock and awe face, to the point that when my wife came in from work, she looked at their faces and she's like, should they be watching this? And I was like, because their faces were just like
Yeah.
that zombie, like
Yeah.
almost like half terror look on their face, and I
Yeah.
thought, oh boy, somebody's gonna get up during the night with a bad dream,
Right.
but it was
Well,
worth it, whatever, to let them do it. And
I
they wanted to
mean,
watch another episode. They
okay.
did. They loved it. So yeah.
Battle for Endor was obviously aggressively dark, and that would have
Oh
like
yeah.
scared the life out of my son. But he had a friend over when we were watching it, and they were just kind of playing around, and they'd kind of check in every once in a while. It wasn't like it wasn't enough to get
Yeah.
them to like stop what they were doing and watch it until the fires started, until Isrina pops through, and because Wicket's holding a broom,
Uh,
and Isrina
yep.
comes into the shot and hits the broom and it lights on fire, and then she kind of zooms into the forest and the whole forest is on fire because, well, you said it in the synopsis, but they're using her to kind of
Yes, they're
destroy.
using her. Yeah.
And when that happened, when the fires were starting and they were like, oh my gosh, what are they going to do? Then both my son and his friend were like locked onto it. So probably a similar situation with your girls there. When it got a little bit intense, it kind of pulled them in.
Yeah, it was a little, and I don't think they like the aliens on the spiders too. That they're doing
Yeah.
the,
What you said,
you know.
the vision they have where the trees are all like weeping and then like converging on them,
Oh yeah,
that was a scary image.
it was like weird bird screeching
Yeah.
too. Like, that definitely came from a different time, and I do remember like weird things in movies at
Yeah.
that time
Yeah.
being like that, like a
Mm-hmm.
PG movie, and just being like, oh, that is like, that's on the high end of a PG-13 movie now, because of
Yeah.
the terror factor of it. I can't remember what they call it, but they call it, intense, like intense scenes or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. And
Mm-hmm.
that was definitely an intense scene, I
Oh,
would
for
say. It kind
sure.
of put
Yeah.
me off. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I got to turn it down a little
A
bit,
little heavy.
So
That's a little heavy.
yeah.
I would say that I enjoyed it. I mean, it
Yeah.
didn't. I don't think it overstayed its welcome. I wasn't like, how many more minutes do we have on this? It moved
Yeah.
pretty quickly. It was clever, like using the foam to put out the fire.
You knew that was going to happen, right? With a
Oh
random
sure,
little.
oh
I
sure,
had to put it in the synopsis because it was just a random little scene in
yeah.
the show, and they're like, "Yes, we've created the fire
Mm-hmm.
extinguishing foam," and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
"Okay,
Yeah,
that's gonna be this
that's
episode."
gonna be a thing.
Like,
That is going to
a
be a
kid's
thing.
going, "Oh, I wonder." Yeah, yeah. As an adult, you're like, "I figured it out already."
I think because so I have vague memories of this episode, and I remember the episodes around because we had it either on VHS or DVD, that the Haunted Village like movie. It was presented
Hmm.
like a movie. That was a lot more common. I feel like for the home
Yeah.
video market when they were starting to do that a little bit more. I remember they did
Hmm.
that with the live action Flash series. They took like 3 episodes and they were like Flash the movie. It's like, okay, that's 3 episodes
Yeah.
without credits, but whatever. So I do remember it a little bit, but the package that they put out that's Haunted Village, which is the 4 episodes, they are all a little bit spooky.
Yeah.
Like there is just kind of a
Hmm.
spooky undertone to them. And it's funny because the character designs are so like light and fluffy.
They are. Everyone is on either end of the spectrum. Either
Yeah.
they're very evil or very good, and then you
Yes.
got the Duloc guy
Yeah.
who's just playing the middle.
I was glad to see Cheap Chirpa and Logray back in the mix.
Yes, that
A
was
lot of
fun.
got some
Yep.
familiar Ewoks back in there. Nice that Wicket took center stage, and I really like that they used Isrina again. I think that's just a nice bit of
Yeah.
continuity. If you're in the '80s an Ewok fan, it'd be like, hey, I remember her. So I think that was cool overall.
Yeah, and they didn't overdo they didn't overdo her scenes either. I think in
Mm-mm.
Caravan of Courage that I think that was like a 15-minute scene that probably could have been done in three.
Yeah,
Um,
right. Yeah,
but like,
yeah,
in this one you're like, oh, it's Isrina, and then like she had purpose rather than like in Caravan of Courage, she spent, an hour in Mace's pocket,
right.
right? I mean,
Yeah,
isn't that where she was?
pretty much.
So you're
Yeah,
like, oh yeah, there's a wispy, right?
yeah,
Just at the right moment.
yeah.
He's like, oh,
She's
I remember.
she's just chilling. She's
So
just
like,
chilling in there.
yeah, in this one, she becomes a character,
Yeah,
and you feel for her because she is just part of this twisted plan by Morag to light the forest on fire, and
yep.
and you feel bad. And then when she gets that water splashed on her, you're like, yes. Then she's able to tell everyone what's going on. So it was perfect. I thought that's engaging.
I like that they set up some backstory, right? Like we had some bad blood
Hmm.
between Morag and Logray,
Oh yeah.
and I liked that they layered that in there. That they were like, oh yeah, these two, they go way back, hate each other. I like that. I
Yep.
think that's a good. I think that's a
We're
good
gonna
little
find
through
out.
line to see how it goes.
Well, they did a little bit of that with I wouldn't call it backstory, but they set up other characters, right?
Hmm.
So some of the people from that list were not really in the movie, and if they were actually in that Festival of Hoods scene.
Okay.
They were 3 Ewoks. So those 3 Ewoks they're gonna become
Okay.
regular characters in the show.
Hmm.
So this episode, it hit all the things it needed to do.
Yeah.
It introduced the main characters, the antagonist, protagonist, anybody in between. It set up that backstory, like you said. So we're going to have that compelling thing. We're probably going to have a lot of scenes with having to do with the soul trees and things
Mhm.
like that. So that's going to be a thing that they need to protect. And then these characters, they're going to be, they're introducing new characters at the very end that you're kind of like, oh, all right, cool. Like 3 little Ewoks coming of age. They get their hoods.
Yeah.
I thought that was strange when they were like, oh yeah, for the Festival of Hoods. And I thought, oh boy, what's this? Festival of Hoods. And then they earn their hoods and they're part of the tribe.
Yeah.
And now they
Yeah.
have to do work.
That's cool.
Right. And that's what's significant, right? That's why I said coming of age.
Yeah.
They don't actually say that. They're like, now, you're part of us.
You're
and
legit.
you will contribute.
There is a pretty big paperback like storybook collection of Ewok books that go along with
Mhm.
this series. Some are originals, some are adapting episodes that were out there at the time. There were books and records and things. So even though this is only 26 episodes, I think it did pretty well at the time. And the
Yeah.
second season does that thing where it's 2 stories per episode. So, they kind of,
Okay.
messed with
They
that a
changed
little
around
bit.
a little bit.
And then, of course,
Yeah.
the comic book, which ran for quite a bit there as well. So,
The omnibus is pretty thick.
it is. Yeah,
And
I've read
yeah,
it. I've read it. I think
my
we
daughter
should.
has read it. I think. Well, she doesn't read, but she has looked at the pictures
Yeah.
probably 4 or 5 times through now.
Yep.
Yeah, she loves it. And
All right.
I told you, right, that I was carrying that tray of glasses and they tried to trip me with a rope tied to uh tied to something.
Yes.
And when my wife asked where they learned that from, Zoe said, I learned that from a book. And we knew exactly what book she was talking about. She learned it
She
from the
tried to Ewok
Ewok
you.
book.
Yeah, if she's
Yeah, I was like,
if
well, here comes an STSD walker, yeah, or
if your kids
ATSD.
strafe you in a glider, you'll know that they've been watching the Ewoks and paying attention.
Freaking rocks on my head. I saw this in a book.
On that topic, what is your Ichiwawa moment for this episode?
I think my Ichiwawa moment was the Izrina moment, right?
Okay.
I was watching it and I completely forgot that you had said in the Caravan of Courage episode that we will be seeing her again.
Uh-huh.
I forgot.
Yeah.
And when they were like, "Oh, the aura blossoms, they're not. They're wispies." And I thought, "Oh, wait." And then he's like, and then the one little one was like, "It's Izrina, Queen Izrina." And I was just like, no
Look at
way!
that.
Like
Yeah.
here we are already. I
Little
mean, we're like
connection.
30 seconds in, and they're already bridging
Mhm.
Caravan of Courage. So I thought that was really cool, and that kind of set me up for the rest of the episode, just being like,
Yeah.
all right, here we go. Like this is great already. This is cool.
Yeah.
That was mine.
Yeah,
Definitely
I got to
mine.
give it to their ingenuity for me.
Yeah.
I think the making the little foam to put out the fires, and then the
Mhm.
whole catapult glider combo. I mean, that's
Yeah.
a sweet spot for me with Ewoks. So the fact that they got that 1-2 punch and they're putting out fires, and I liked that. I just thought, yes, this is cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was a time for the elders to trust Wicket, right? Because
Yeah.
they didn't trust him, right? And so this episode, there's that overarching metaphor of trusting the entire episode.
Yeah.
They lied once, and then they had to re-earn their trust in
Here
the
we go.
tribe. And they
So
did
do you
it.
think that's the message of this? Because normally these shows from this era will be like, now kids, remember. Do you think that's the
Yeah.
hidden message? You got to earn
I
trust.
think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's because they did that. They lied about the game, and then they told the truth about something else, but they were like, oh, and it was the fire.
Mm-hmm.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
and they were like, "Oh, the elders thought that they had Chief Chirpa thought they started the fire."
Yeah.
And Wicket was like, "No, it just happened,"
Mhm.
because he didn't know, and so they didn't believe him, and then they didn't believe him about the that the forest was on fire, and so after a long discussion, they were finally like, "All right, let's go, let's do this.
Mhm.
It is on fire. We need to listen to them." And then they again doubted them about the gliders. The wind was
Yep.
too strong and stuff
Yep.
like that. And I think the whole episode they were, working to regain
So maybe
trust.
proving themselves, and yeah. All right.
Yes, proving their
I'll
worth,
take it.
proving their.
Well,
Yeah.
what do you think? What do you think of the whole thing? How many yub nubs does this earn from you out of 5?
I really liked this one, and I think I'd give this like, I don't know, 4.25. I don't want to get a 4.5.
So specific.
But
Okay.
I don't know, maybe a 4 point. I'm gonna go at a 4.5, I guess, because it did such a good job, and it could be a disaster after this episode.
Yeah.
I don't care, because this episode did so well at bridging those two mediums, the real life Star Wars and the cartoon Star Wars together. It really did, and it deserves that recognition for it. So
I think I'd give it 4. I think it. I would have liked a little bit more color. I would have maybe liked just a little bit longer setting the scene of like, okay, these are the characters. But, as you're describing it, it's like they are having this coming of age time. They're kind of coming into their own. We had a clear villain. We had clear peril. We got to see how they figured it out and solve the problem. I think it's it's an engaging piece of 80s cartoon here. And I think that it's well written. Things are set up early on that pay off at the end. Satisfying conclusion. So yeah, I'll give it 4 out of 5.
All right. Average 4.25.
That's right. Yeah. Yep. We average right in the middle there. Yep.
Perfect.
Okay. Well, this was, we should have had Crystal do this one with us because this was much less painful
I
than,
know. She would have been so much happier.
She would have. Yeah. We'll have her back.
Yes, we will. Definitely.
if you didn't listen to the Sharknado special that we did over on 902 and Here We Go, you can pop over into that feed. Steve joined Kendra and I to talk all about Sharknado, and it was, an experience.
It was a blast.
It was.
Yeah, that's a fun movie to tooth your way through,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Isn't that the saying? No, it's definitely not. But
I don't think so, but I like that you tried to get in a shark pun. I respect that.
Yeah.
That was that pun was more thought out than the entirety of the Sharknado movie. So
We felt
I'll give you
like
that.
we were drowning the entire time watching it. How about that?
It's true. Just treading water, waiting for a shark to come end it all. All right. Well, you can join us next time as we continue our deep dive into the Ewoks cartoon series with Season 1, Episode 2, The Haunted Village. Steve, I'll see you then.
Absolutely. This Endorian Life is brought to you by the Radio Meanwhile Network. You can find more about this show and others like it at our network's website, radiomeanwhile.com. Share your thoughts on this and upcoming episodes by following us on Facebook or Twitter at Endorian Life. And please rate, subscribe, and share this show wherever you get your podcasts.